Hello, my name's Peter Wren from the I Wanna Believe channel and welcome to Paranormal Encounters. Get ready to journey into the mysterious and unsettling world of the paranormal. In this gripping show, Paranormal Encounters, we delve into the lives of those who have come face to face with the unexplained. Through candid and heartfelt conversations, we bring you the graphic, personal and emotional stories of paranormal witnesses, revealing the chilling realities that lie beyond the veil.
My name is Taylor. I live in Surrey, BC. This is my story. I found my apartment about 3 or 4 years ago when I was moving from place to place with my animals. Rent's been really high, obviously, because it's like 2020. I spent a good maybe a couple weeks looking for this place, found it. It was pretty cheap, right? Reasonable. I've been living with people for maybe a year, paying anywhere from $850 to $600 just to live with somebody else. This place, when I got it, was $850 with basically everything included but internet. And being able to keep my animals was a plus because I've had some of them since I was born. So I was pretty happy. Apartment in Surrey, it seemed pretty nice. You know, it's kind of spacious. It's well made, I would say. You know, with like the size of the rooms and everything. But one of the curious things was when I did move in, just to come in for the viewing, I was the first one, and it looked like somebody had left the night before. Just really dirty. Just everything seemed like a panic. There was even like some damage in the walls, like, you know, somebody had like kicked something or just grabbed all their furniture and just left. So I've been here since then, and when I started getting activity was at least maybe a year into living here, but my animals were never quite comfortable. And I've seen spirits like my entire life. So I thought, oh, it could be that, or it could just be my head, or maybe it's because it's a dark apartment, right? Maybe they just don't like it. And it was always centered in my room. But it turns out that they were correct. Okay. The first thing that happened where it definitely seemed like there was something in here in the apartment with me was middle of the night. I'd been woken up, it sounded like, I think I heard something, and I usually keep my my bedroom door closed, and I used to sleep in the dark. I kind of woke up and my eyes were still adjusting, and I looked to my door, and it looked like there was a man there. But obviously you're still waking up, so you're not really sure what's going on. And I kept looking, and the guy that was there, like, kind of half hid his face and then kind of like slowly looked forward. And he just slowly came in my room and went around my whole bed to the corner of my bedroom, where my closet is. And by then my eyes had started adjusting, and I got really panicked because I thought there was an intruder in my room, because it looked like a person. It looked solid, and dude was not wearing a shirt, no shoes, sweatpants, kind of stocky build, looked like an East Indian man, and he was kind of smirking at me from the corner. And he slowly started coming towards me, and I started screaming, like, you know, who are you? What do you want? What are you doing here? And he just kept smirking and coming towards me. And in a panic, you know, not knowing what to do, and it's like middle of the night, I just started like throwing pillows and blankets, and everything kept going through him. And that's when it hit me that it wasn't an intruder. But the energy in the counter was so scary that I thought I was going to be like murdered or raped in the event, until I realized it was a ghost. And then I started panicking, scrambling on my bed to get to the nearest light fixture so I could turn it on. And it still took him a solid maybe 5-10 seconds to fully disappear again, but he got like inches from my face, just kind of like just smirking away. It was terrifying. And then I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I was trying to phone people, and obviously nobody's really going to answer the phone at like 1 a.m. So I was just kind of stuck there by myself. Well, the day after, I ended up calling the Paranormal Society in Vancouver. Or no, I didn't call them. I emailed them in a panic because, well, I've had a lot of encounters with spirits and stuff my whole life. That was definitely the most intense I've ever had, and it really scared me. So I sent off an email saying what had happened. I was very scared, and I didn't know if it was like something demonic or just evil, or, you know, I was just very concerned. And they got back to me pretty quickly. So that was good. But I still had to deal with, from that point on, nightly activity that went on for 6 or 8 months. And during every night, all the cables in my room would be slowly dragged whenever I wasn't looking. Usually multiple of them, just dragged, you know, and it'd keep being dragged until I turned my head to look at the direction where stuff was being moved, and I'd stare at it. And as soon as I looked the other way on my bed, or I went to roll over and go to bed, the dragging noise would start again, which was very eerie. Sometimes I would end up turning on the light to just stare at all the cables and everything. I think one time I ended up having the light on and just watching it for half an hour just to see if it was just like the wires settling, right? Because, you know, like weather and stuff. Nothing. Turn off the light, turned over, and as soon as I did that, the second I did that, more dragging ensued. So that was a common thing in my house that would happen. And then some other things that would happen would be lights flickering in my bedroom. I ended up getting my Himalayan salt lamp, and I put it in the corner there. And for hours on end, my light would flicker like rapidly. And my place is probably like a landlord special where they renovated themselves. So I was thinking faulty wiring. But when it kept going on, the second I would say, hey, can you stop that? It would immediately stop, like in the middle of a flicker. It would just full stop. And that would have to happen multiple times. And every time I asked it to stop, it would stop. So that was highly suspect. There would also be shuffling outside my door or in my bedroom. Sometimes some things would be knocked over, or I'd come back home and stuff would be rearranged, like, you know, just like little objects, or objects would go missing and then reappear in like a weird place. But that was not the most common activity. The most common was just the dragging of the wires and the shuffling, and every once in a while I get tapping in the walls, and I'm a plumber, so I'd be like, oh, it's just pipes. Right? But it would just be like really, like, you know, just like constantly, again, for hours on end, until I said, hey, can you stop? And then I might get one last little like defiant like knock on the wall, but then it would stop and it wouldn't happen again that night. Probably the creepier one of the knocking would be it would start knocking the little slits for like your mattress to be held on. So underneath my bed, and I store stuff under my bed, so, you know, there really shouldn't be anything being able to be knocked under there, but tapping would go on under there as well. It would happen on the wood, or it would happen on the Tupperware containers I have stored under my bed. So that was a popular thing for it to do, and that went on again for the 6 or 8 months. One of the more scary things that happened was at some point my faucet turned on. Not very fast, you know, it wasn't like, you know, like a full opening of like, you know, water rushing out, but it was enough that I thought that somebody had come in my house, right, and just turned on the faucet a little bit. So that was scary. And then just occasionally it sounded like somebody was lifting up the toilet lid and slamming it. And one time I happened to be talking on the phone with my boyfriend, and I made the comment that it would be really funny if my tub went off one time, and the second I finished that, my shower head, which it's never done it since or before, the shower head turned on very briefly to shoot out like a jet of water, and then it stopped. and it was almost like a little like, you know, F you sort of action, like I'm here. So that's most of the activity that happened, along with just my animals being startled being in my room, where one of them, he doesn't scare very easy, but he would always watch something in the corner of my room and be very upset. And a few times he actually screamed and flew out of my room. So obviously, my bedroom is the most active spot in the house. It's still haunted. Nothing really terrible goes on, but because I was mentioning doing this interview to some people yesterday, some stuff happened last night. Just very basic stuff that's been going on also for months that I forgot to mention was it kind of likes to reveal itself as like a spider-like thing in my room. Like, just, it looks like shadows. It's like a spider the size of a large dinner plate, just shuffling around in my room, just in the ceilings and stuff. But it likes to kind of approach me like really slow and then like scatter somewhere else. So that happened last night. And another popular thing is just showing like kind of faces in the wall, and graffiti for some reason. Just graffiti or written threatening words. I'll wake up to in the middle of the night or in the morning see them on my wall or in other places in my house. So that can be scary, and I've never experienced that anywhere, just this house. And it doesn't happen when I even go to anybody's house, so it's just strictly in the apartment. So I wonder if like the people that happen to be here were affiliated with like some gang, or just maybe they just like doing that art. But there's supposed to be 3 spirits, I believe, in here, and the male is the most active and the strongest one. But I'm supposed to maybe also have like another resident spirit that is an ancestor that kind of watches over me. This is just what I've been told by some other people that I had come and like do a mini investigation and stuff, just get a reading on the place because I was just curious. But another odd thing that I've never had happen anywhere as well. I have very messy handwriting, so it definitely wasn't me. But in my bathroom on my mirror, it looked like somebody had written really nice handwriting on the mirror with like the water residue. I tried to take a picture of it, couldn't get a picture of it. I tried to read it for a few hours and I just had to give up. I'm like, well, that's really a nice handwriting, but I can't read it. The effort was wasted on trying to leave a message. So that was kind of cool, but eerie. But one of the more scary recent things that happened maybe a couple months ago is I was sleeping and the house had been reasonably quiet. I mean, you know, there was still activity going on, but it's been simmering down the last few months. But just before I did go back in dormancy, I was sleeping and I was woken up by flapping noises. And so that was weird. And I was debating on getting up, you know, to check it out, but I was just like, it's nothing. But then I felt like a sharp pierce to my skin on my neck area. And I looked up because then I had to open my eyes and there was about like 6 or 8 bats, just like little tiny vampire bats. Like they're kind of cute, but they were circling around the light fixture in my house and they didn't go away for quite a while. I had to turn on light to make them go away eventually. So that was interesting. And I got back a hold with one of your guys' members to talk about it because I was really disturbed by it. And she asked me if I had taken a picture or anything of right after it happened. And I said, no, I didn't. And she's like, oh, can you do that? Or can you look now? And I think it was like 3 days later. I was like, I don't think there's really going to be anything there. You know, like it's probably nothing. And I felt around my neck and I could feel the little, like bite marks, and I managed to get a photo of it. So that was another interesting thing. But I haven't had that happen since, but I didn't ever expect to get bitten by something. When they came in for the investigation, they managed to validate the very first time they came, because they said they might have to do multiple attempts to see if they could get any data in my house. But they were only here for maybe 3 hours and they left. And a few weeks later, I got the notification that they reviewed all the footage with all the members, and they had gotten a couple EVPs. They had tried to get evidence with like movement, with using the lasers and the light sensor stuff, and they didn't get anything. But the clearest EVP was from the corner of my bedroom, where the man has been seen, or where I sense him, like, because I just sense like a energy, just kind of creepy vibe, like somebody staring at you a lot. They managed to get an EVP there. They put down the tape recorder and they were going for a smoke break, and you can hear them talking. And as they're leaving my bedroom, you can hear a very noticeable male voice saying "right here," and he doesn't sound angry or scary or anything. It's just he's just announcing like right here, like he knows that they're there. And I had told the spirit that I was gonna have an investigation happen, and that people were going to be in the house, and if he wanted to be noticed, to do some activity if he could, right? And that nobody was there to hurt him. We're just trying to prove that he actually existed, and to not be afraid of the investigators, and just they were going to be respectful and everything. And so he did. I'm not really sure what's going on, to be honest. From the other people I tried to get to just do a reading on my place, they said that the male is just kind of trapped here. But I guess he maybe can go if he wants. I'm not too sure. I'd have to ask them again, because this was done quite a while ago, so my memory's a little foggy. But my understanding is that he likes being here, and he likes being around me, that he likes me a lot. And that at first his intent was like to really just kind of mess with me, but also the investigation team, the paranormal investigators, they said that his intent wasn't to scare me as bad as he did, because it was quite traumatizing, to be honest. Like for the last year or two, I hadn't been able to sleep in my place with any lights off. Like even the Himalayan salt lamp, I was like not of any use to me. Sometimes I had my bedroom lights on, or my whole house lit up, and then on top of that I would have my light on and another light on the ground, just in case one went out, or because like no matter how bright it was, I just never felt safe. And I could never face the wall, which is how I like to sleep. I like to face that direction. So it's taken many years to just be able to sleep the way I want, and to sleep with just a low light on, because I'm still scared of seeing somebody in my house again. But I've never seen a full-bodied apparition in my place again. I have seen him come close to my face one time, and I think that was just him trying to be comforting, because I was in a pretty dark place mentally, and I had a really bad night. And I woke up in the morning. It was probably like 9 a.m. or something. I just, maybe it was 9 or maybe it was 8. It was still pretty dark out in my I live in the basement suite. But I woke up and I saw his face, and he was just like inches away. And me thought it was interesting that he kind of showed himself again, just because I was upset. And he looked concerned. He didn't have the same cocky look he did on his face in our first encounter. He legitimately looked kind of concerned for me. So, I don't know. I think he's mostly here just to kind of feed off energy, whether negative or positive. I don't think he really has any like actual malicious intent. It's just kind of like living with like a troll in your house, or an internet bully. They kind of want a reaction out of you, but they don't actually intend to really hurt you or cause the harm that he did psychologically the first time. Apparently he feels quite bad about that, and he hasn't done it since. I think that was just the only way he could get my attention, was by doing something like that, because he'd been trying probably to do really subtle stuff that I'd been like, oh, that's nothing, right? For the first like year or whatever I lived in my place before the activity happened, like he was just trying all these subtle ways, and I just was blatantly ignoring them. Yeah. I just think he's here to feed, and also just likes being around me. And then the other spirits, one of them, we're not really sure who or what they are, but we're aware that the secondary one is supposed to be like an ancestor, um, watching over me, but I wouldn't really know who or what because I'm adopted. But that's all I know. But I'm told it's supposed to be somebody directly blood related to me, but I wouldn't know. So that's really all I know about my place.
What kind of research have you done? The tenants or the people that live upstairs, are they East Indian as well? I know it's Surrey, so it probably more likely is. But
Yeah, yeah,
do they
they're East Indian.
have they disclosed anything about family members ever living down there? Or
No, and I've never really mentioned it to them, right? Because I think the last thing you really want to hear from a tenant is, "Hey, your place is hella haunted."
yeah, that's true, especially with East Indian culture as well. They'll probably kick you
Yeah.
out. No, that makes sense. I think that's it. Linda, do you have anything?
Well, one thing I really am curious about is, do you want this issue resolved in some way ever? And if so, how do you feel it can be resolved?
Uh, because on the one hand, I kind of feel like him and I and maybe the other spirits have more or less kind of become like friends. Um, they still kind of troll me, but when they do, I just say, "Hey, can you stop that? Like, it's upsetting me," or "I really need to sleep tonight. Can you please not do any activity?" And whenever I ask them to, they always oblige. Like, I've never had them not listen and just disrespect that. Uh, but then at the same time, I'm also concerned that if they're lonely and or need a place to go, like who am I to like boot them out? But I've also said to them that if they start doing really negative things and start deeply affecting me, like as bad as that first encounter and stuff, then I will try and contact the right people and get them forcibly removed from the properties. But I'm okay with us just being like roommates and stuff. Some of the activity can just be funny, and then some of it's just strange, and then the other small percentage can be terrifying. But a lot of the really weird stuff, like the seeing the spiders or the writing or faces on the wall, have mostly stopped. But I had that happen last night, and it always does kind of make me startled and really nervous when I see that. So I'm always trying to panic to turn on a light to get them to dissipate.
My name is Linda Quirino, and I'm a paranormal investigator. I have been one for 42 years in the field. And this particular case is quite interesting because there are so many elements that we can talk about. And having been in the field for as long as I've been in the field, all of these things have come up at one time or another. And anyone who's had paranormal experiences or have investigated paranormal experiences likely have come across them as well. So let's talk about some commonalities. And there's so many things in this particular case that I think bears looking at. So first of all, she talked about the fact that this particular apartment that she lives in is obviously reasonable rent. She was able to keep all of her animals, able to move in, and she'd been looking for a place for a long time. It's reasonable, the price is right, but there were telltale signs that maybe things weren't all, perfect in the state of Denmark, because obviously there were signs that somebody had left in a hurry. Damage in the walls, all of that stuff, and when it looks like somebody left in a hurry, that's kind of a red flag, first of all. But when you're desperate, and let's face it, these times are tough, you need to find some place to live that's reasonable, you're going to take it. And this was the perfect place, quote unquote, for her. So there were telltale signs. Also, the fact that she lived there for about a year before anything really happened. And yet when you speak with her later on in the program, she does say that, maybe perhaps subtle things were happening and occurring during that year that she didn't really pay attention to until, of course, a year later, something happened. That was interesting. Likely because whatever was there wanted her attention. And, it's kind of like the little kid who's next to you going, Mom, Mom, and then you're not paying attention. They might grab something and, hit you with it, or just yell at you and say, hey, Mom, pay attention. This is kind of what happened. So when she talks about the first occurrence that happened in the middle of the night, and she looked, and it looked like there was a man in her doorway. And then that particular man, she thought might have been an intruder, entered the room. She started throwing things at him and screaming. And when things went right through him, she realized, oh gosh, this isn't an intruder. It's not a person, a real live person. This is likely a spirit. It's likely a ghost. That's when, that was a game changer. So she was scrambling to get to the light fixture. It didn't go away immediately when the light was on. That's kind of interesting as well. But obviously, it wanted her attention. It was smirking at her. So she felt uncomfortable. There was a distinct feeling in the air. This is not quite right. And this is a little disconcerting. And I'm scared. So that was interesting. And she reached out to a paranormal group, which is always a good idea. So people who do have experiences, kudos to them for reaching out to somebody who can help them. So she did do exactly that. That's a wonderful thing to do. She did mention that these things have been happening to her, or encounters of some paranormal kind have been happening to her throughout her life. Again, that's sort of something that if you're in the field, most people do share. If they have had experiences, things have happened throughout their life, from the time that they were little, and that things perhaps follow them wherever they live. So it's not germane to the area that they live in, that something happened to them, age 5, age 6, throughout their entire life. So that's a commonality. Interesting that she talks about things moving. That's another common theme as well. The cables in her room were moving. And of course, when she was looking at them, they weren't moving. But when she turned her back, when her body was facing the wall, her head was facing the wall, she could hear the cables dragging in her room. That's a common experience, and ghosts and spirits can move things. People in the field often talk about that. So that was interesting. Another thing that was very interesting was the lights flickering in her bedroom, the Himalayan salt lamp flickering. And, she thought that it was faulty wiring. And that's always a good thing. Always check out to see if there's a logical explanation for anything that you feel might be paranormal that's happening in your environment. But when she asked it to stop flickering the lights, it actually did stop. So whatever is there is obviously an intelligent entity, and that she can communicate with it is really an interesting thing. So when she does speak to it, it stops. That's good. That's good. She hears things shuffling outside the bedroom. Things were rearranged, things appearing in different locations. Those things, again, they're common when people describe some of their paranormal experiences. So that there's something there. Knocking and tapping, and specifically under her bed, which was very disconcerting. When you've got a lot of stuff under your bed and under bed boxes or Tupperware containers, as she described, that's really disconcerting, that there's something under your bed that's knocking and tapping. But again, that is something that often people will talk about, tapping and knocking in strange locations, or locations that are inaccessible to a regular, normal, earthly human being. She talks about the faucets being turned on, how she talked about the shower head turning on while she was on the phone with her boyfriend. They do like to play with water, things like taps and water sources in a home. They like to do that. They like to flush the toilet, all of that kind of thing. That's another common experience when you're dealing with a spirit. Energetically, they like water. She also mentioned, especially, I think at the very beginning, where, she talked about, or was talking to people about sharing her experiences with others, and how as soon as she said something about that, whatever was in her apartment made itself known. So often when you're a paranormal investigator, that will happen. People are afraid to share their experiences and to voice them because somehow it concretizes it, and they're afraid that something around them, a presence, will hear them and perhaps be agitated or react in some way, sometimes negatively, sometimes just, letting them know that they heard. You're talking about this. We don't really want you to talk about this. We want to keep it mano a mano. So that was interesting. Her animals being startled, again, another common experience because animals can see and hear frequencies that we can't see and hear. And the fact that, things are still happening is interesting too, because often, we hear about paranormal cases that do eventually become resolved in some way. This is still happening. So it's an unresolved case. There are things happening, for instance, the spider-like shadows. Spirits will manifest in particular ways. Sometimes they're as mists, sometimes, smells, sometimes they're feelings. This particular spirit likes to manifest as a spider-like shadow. There are faces in the wall. There's writing on the walls. That's really interesting. Random writing that appears on the walls or maybe in a foggy mirror in the bathroom. Those are things that can often happen. We've heard about this in different cases where spirits like to sort of automatically write on objects, walls, notebooks, etc. So that was interesting. She has had an investigation in her apartment, and they did manage to get an EVP, which was situated in the corner of her bedroom where she feels this person's presence or this spirit's presence. What was disconcerting to me was the bite, that she was bitten, and that there was a manifestation. There was a flapping noise that she woke up to one night during the night, and she saw little bats that were flying near her light fixture. They looked like little vampire bats, and one of them actually bit her. That's interesting. You hear about cases where people are scratched or cases where people are pushed. It's almost like, somebody reaches through the ether and does all of these things. Well, this was a manifestation of these little vampire bats, and she actually was pierced. Why that happened? Well, that's another story. I mean, maybe it just wanted her to be aware of its presence. Was it warning her? What happened prior to and what happened after? We don't know. So there's all kinds of different things. I think, well, she mentioned, that she thought perhaps whatever it was in the apartment might have been trapped there, but that, it likes being there, and that it likes her a lot, and that it wants to stay. At the beginning, perhaps it wasn't sure. It manifested as this smirking kind of character, but now it seems friendly. It seems to like her, and she's not quite sure whether she really wants this to be resolved. Is this a case that will require a resolution? Or in some cases, people don't really want whatever's there to leave. It's almost like a friend. It's looking after them. It becomes a normal thing to have happen in their environment, and they might get lonely if it leaves. It's definitely a familiar thing. So I would love to see how this resolves, if it does resolve. But what an incredible ride. I can't imagine living in a haunted apartment like that. And kudos to her for doing it. And kudos to her for sharing her story.